This episode is sponsored by Echo. Hear clearly, care confidently.
Learn more at echohealth.com. That's EKO health.com. And use code JSP for $50 off any stethoscope.
Just Some Podcast Media.
The thoughts and opinions on Just Some Podcast are of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views of organizations that employ them or they volunteer for. They are also not responsible for spontaneous black holes or nuclear wars that may occur. You have been warned.
Welcome, everybody, to another fun-filled and exciting episode of Just Some Podcast. This is Tom.
Hey, this is Ben. Tom, how are you, man?
I am doing well, Ben. Weather's warming up. You know, things at work are going pretty smooth. Got a great episode. I mean, life is firing on all cylinders right now, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good episode here. We just announced that we're going to start doing weekly episodes of our other show. We'll continue to monitor, which is kind of our mystery, creepy podcast. So if you like that type of stuff, make sure you check that out too.
Who doesn't like mysteries and figuring them out and talking about why, you know, certain things do certain things, and people love that stuff, Ben.
It's true. It's true. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about our episode tonight, Tom. We got the opportunity to sit down and interview Dr. Simon Maltais. So this guy is an active cardiac surgeon. He is born in Quebec. He's French-Canadian. He's board certified in Canada in cardiac surgery. Beyond that, Tom, he's got a doctorate degree in biomedical engineering and heart regeneration. And he has published over 160 articles, numerous books, but he's come on the show to talk about his newest book that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so let's just back up another second, and this is straight from the old heart of JSP. Dr. Maltais, or Maltais, even though you told us twice how to say your name, we still found a way to forget and mess it up frequently. We're not even doing it on purpose. I don't even hold the fact that you're French-Canadian against you and that you like the Canadians. So, I mean, we actually genuinely really like this guy, but we just found a way to butcher his name. So you're going to hear it several times when he pronounces his own name for us during the show. That's the one I want you to listen to. But other than that, it's a great interview. He is a fantastic guy. And honestly, after listening to just the first little bit about what the book is and how he wrote it, I was like, have you been following me? Like, it just, like, I felt like maybe he implanted microphones in, you know, my teeth or something and listened to everything I said. I couldn't figure it out, but it really hit home, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so his new book is out now. It's called Healthcare Anonymous. It's putting yourself first to avoid anxiety, addiction, and burnout. And I got to say, Tom, I was very impressed with how candid and open he was about his experience, where he came from in writing this book. And, you know, as we are, God willing, getting out of this pandemic and moving on to quote unquote normal life again, I think this book could be life changing to a lot of people.
Yeah. Again, as a person that feels like I'm either having burnout issues or on the cusp of it, listening to him talk and hearing, like you said, some of the things he went through and how I could immediately identify with a lot of what he was saying. And I know I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of people out there that I think would really benefit from hearing what he has to say first and then making a decision if they want to buy his book. I think everybody should, but I mean, we got to talk to him first too, so they should get to listen and then make a decision and buy that book and do yourself some good.
And I thought the really cool thing about it is the way that he approached it, in that basically taking care of people is what's making us sick. And so he treats it like a disease process. So for all of us that are in medicine, we understand that. So, you know, we understand the signs and symptoms, the diagnosis, the treatment. And so that's how he breaks it down. And so, I mean, again, awesome stuff, especially, you know, with mental health being on the forefront of everybody's mind in the pandemic, but also, you know, he talks about some partnerships that he's doing with sports, you know, with like Simone Biles doing, stepping out of the Olympics because of mental health. There's just, even outside of healthcare, I think there's going to be a lot of resonance with this book.
Exactly. And I know another young, I think she was a tennis star, she was ranked number 1 in the world. She just decided to retire at 25 for issues like this. So I think that this is a very timely book for all of us in healthcare that are coming out of the pandemic. And 2, really, honestly, it's something that just about anybody I think could find some help in, no matter where they're at, and kind of apply it to themselves. So again, what a great guy. Genuinely really enjoyed. Hopefully he'll be back on the show for just about anything. That's how good the interview went, is we were like, you could just come back for anything and talk about it. So,
but to be fair, Tom's like that with every guest. So,
well, yeah, a lot.
But let's do our social media shout out. Let's do our your story you may have missed, and then we'll get into the interview. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, all at Just Some Podcast. Our website's www.justsomepodcast.com. Email jsp@justsomepodcast.com. Email us. Let us know if you're going to buy this book, and if you are, what your thoughts are on it, because I'm really excited to hear some feedback from this, and I know that Tom and I are planning on buying it as the book comes out. So, Tom, if they want to help out our show, what else could they do?
They could go to our website. They could scroll down to just about the bottom of the page. You'll see an Amazon affiliate link. Click on that before you do anything, put anything in your cart, or do any shopping. Everything after that, small amount of proceeds come to the show. We really appreciate it, and it costs you nothing. And thanks.
Also, don't forget to check out our other shows under the Just Some Podcast Media umbrella. So, of course, we have Just Some Podcast here. We have We'll Continue to Monitor, like we talked about earlier. We also have Nurse Papa with David Metzger and Buried Pleasures with Pollyanna Amazing. So make sure you check out all those shows. Give them some love. They need it too. So, Tom, ready to jump into our story that you may have missed?
Yeah.
You sound so happy.
Not the greatest commentator in baseball for nothing, Marty. So
wanted to give an update. We've talked about this story a few times. So we wanted to give an update on the gentleman who had gotten the first pig heart transplant. Sadly, David Bennett died back in the beginning of March after 2 months with the pig heart. They are not saying the exact cause of death, saying that only his condition had begun to deteriorate several days earlier. Some of the physicians that work through this and through some animal to human transplant programs were quoted as saying, "We have gained invaluable insights, learning that the genetically modified pig heart can function well within the human body while the immune system is adequately suppressed." That was Dr. Mohammed Mahoudin. So, Tom, it's kind of a short story, but we kind of wanted to update that. But what are your thoughts?
So, of course, I'm saddened anytime somebody with a transplant loses a life. I mean, obviously, we want the best for them. All controversy in his personal life aside, he still was a person we were hoping would make it. We knew the chances were long, but as bad as the outcome was for him, often as it is in medicine, I hope what we learn will help millions that follow him. And while, again, I'm sad to hear about the failure, I'm happy to hear that it worked, even for a short period of time, and the insight we'll gain on how to treat this going forward. So all in all, it's a sad day for one, but a happy day for the rest of us moving the rest of our lives forward. And I try and keep that perspective when something like this happens.
Yeah, and this isn't a problem that's going to go away. I mean,
no.
In the United States last year, we did 3,800 heart transplants. There was 41,000 transplants performed total in the United States last year. But on the national waiting list, there's more than 106,000 people, and thousands die every year before getting an organ. So, I mean, anything that we can do to potentially decrease that list and decrease those fatalities would certainly be beneficial. Tom, let's take a break here, and on the other side of the ads, we will get into our interview with Dr. Simon Maltais.
Maltais. I don't know. Just wanted to mess with you.
Tom, tell me how much you love your 3M Littman Core digital stethoscope.
Ben, I love it so much. I've talked about it so much, and I've forced so many people to try it within my office that now 3 people that I'm aware of in my immediate circle have bought it, and they all thank me. That's how much I like it.
Yeah, it really is a game-changing piece of equipment, especially if you're going to use a stethoscope daily. It has 40-time amplification, noise cancellation, the Bluetooth to the app, which keeps it updated, but also the app has been updated now, so it detects AFib, and it can detect heart murmurs. Lots of cool stuff coming out from Echo, and they like our listeners a lot, too, so they're going to give you a discount for listening to our shows if you use code JSP at checkout. So if you want to find out more, it's echohealth.com, ekohealth.com. Like I said, use code JSP at checkout. It gives you $50 off your stethoscope and lets them know that we sent you.
Ben, have you been using your products from CBD Stat?
I absolutely have. Matter of fact, last night, because I had been staying up watching some late night television, went ahead and used those drops to get a good night's sleep before my busy day at the office today.
Well, Ben, I keep using mine, and just like I've said every week, and I'm going to keep saying every week following, the stuff really works for me. Every time I have a sore joint or a muscle, I put some of that, roll-on or one of the warming salves on any of my joints, and I feel a million times better.
Yeah, no, it is some great stuff. Everything I love about it is THC-free. It's made right here in the United States, up in Vermont. And they love their healthcare people. So if you are in healthcare, they're giving you a permanent 40% discount. That's a permanent 40% discount. You go to their website, cbdstat.care/healthcare. You fill out their form. You're going to get 40% off. But they also know, Tom, that we have a lot of listeners that aren't necessarily in healthcare, and they want to help them out too. If you're not in healthcare and you still want a discount, you can go to cbdstat.care, order the stuff that you want, and then at checkout, use code JSP20, that's JSP20, and you will get 20% off your order just because you listen to our show. cbdstat.care. All right, Tom. Well, we have a wonderful guest here. I'm just thankful that he's taken time out of his busy schedule. He is a cardiac surgeon. He's an author. His new book just came out, Healthcare Anonymous, Learn How to Put Yourself First While Pursuing a Calling. I want to welcome Dr. Simon, I'm going to mess it up, Maltais?
Maltais, close enough. That's good.
Maltais, okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Simon Maltais to the show. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So as Ben explained or talked about just a second ago, the book is about burnout. So what kind of led you down that path, or what got you interested in wanting to write about that?
Over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, I was going through a lot of things. I mean, I was, failure has never been a really difficult thing for me, since I had started. I mean, I just read that book. I love this expression. I was hitting a lot of green lights, like it was pretty easy. And then over the last 3 or 4 years, it sort of started to have personal and professional issues. And I was sort of wondering, and it started really by journaling through, it was like a form of therapy because I got some point got really depressed. I mean, I was, drinking quite a bit to forget and things. I was going through divorce, through professional things. And so it started to be like more of a form of therapy for me to write about the good stuff, the bad stuff. And then all of a sudden, it sort of became more of a community around me. I started to talk to people sharing experiences. And all of a sudden, we just decided to say, well, why don't we just make a book about it and sort of crack this thing open? And we gathered a bunch of people. We talked about it. I informed myself and with experts, and we describe in the book thing we call healthcare disease, sort of this concept that when you get to a burnout of anxiety or you get to drink, you get to failure, it's the sort of the acute manifestation of a chronic problem, which is acquired over, 10, 15, 20 years. And so that's really what the book is wanting to bring forward, with really kind of a testimony. And the format is describing it as a disease from the preclinical stage to the clinical stage to the recovery phase. And it's kind of a comical thing to say healthcare is a disease, sort of. So to us, it was kind of a form of therapy, but it became something that I think group that I work with pretty proud of.
So, and one more thing, I know Ben's got a question, but I just thought of this. So if this process started, approximately 3 to 4 years ago, so that means it was pre-COVID. So did you find more answers, or did it seem to be even more relevant going through a pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, it became, to our surprise, because I always talk about R because there's a lot of people that helped me through that process. I sort of was pre-COVID going through a lot of stuff, and then COVID hit, and in some ways I was more in the recovery phase at that time. And so it became very relevant as people were going through a lot of stuff as COVID sort of hit. I mean, and COVID was more, and we talk about COVID in the book, the impact it has on healthcare systems and workers, more as another factor to add through, as more of a reason for things to get worse, right? So it's like you're having diabetes. You're sort of okay, and then you fall in love with like a really good chocolate, and you sort of take it, and then it really hits the roof. So it was like this chronic issues with the system, and then you add another thing that's just kicking it to a different level and puts it on steroids, So then, it became really relevant, and I felt like I was better equipped throughout the journey at that point to go through it. But the hope is that the book will help some people, sort of get through that period, which is just starting, by the way. I know we're thinking it's over now, but the repercussion of it has on healthcare workers and the system is just starting, and we're just starting to see what that will look like.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's just really interesting the way you describe healthcare as a disease, and I think so many of us that work in healthcare, you don't realize the kind of the constant barrage that's going on to your mental health until you finally reach that breaking point. So what do you think is some of the manifestations, or how did this become a disease? I mean, was there a few things that you could really pinpoint, or is it just kind of society and healthcare in general?
Yeah, it wasn't an easy process for us to organize thoughts around this, because we know we were onto something, and it came to me and to us as we really talk. I really got involved with an infectious disease, a really smart guy, which they all are, in infectious disease. And he's like, Simon, why don't you just separate that into like the usual disease process? So in order to get a disease, whether it's, let's take E. coli infection, right? To get the infection, you have to have the agent, right? So the causing factor, the bacteria, but it has to go into a host, right, which is sort of the immunocompromised person or somebody that's going through something. And then it has to be in the perfect environment, meaning if it's cold or it's too hot, it's not really working. And if it's sort of warm, it's sort of, so it has to come together to manifest itself, right? So that's how we structured the book. I come back to these vortices, this triangle process of disease to say, it's the host, right, the individual that sort of has acquired character traits that were forced on him. There's issues like, I think a lot of common themes among healthcare workers, which is perfectionism, ego, sort of this self-criticism. So we go into details on that, how the host is an important factor. Then we get into the environment and describe what it looks like to work in healthcare, the changes, right? Sort of the administrative impact, the changes in the system over the last 20 to 30 years to focus on performance, percentages, money, the culture of always doing more, of service, of giving it all, And so the environment we describe that. Even the outside environment, like the shows, right? You watch The Resident, you watch ER, what it portrays as, people that are like, on the brinks of like getting to burnout, and then they, make out in the corridors, and they have divorces. but that's still, it hasn't really changed in like 25 years. What you look on TV is the angry heart surgeon. The smart surgeon is always angry. And Dr. House, he's a genius, but he's a complete narcissist and can't work with anybody. So, you look at this, say, well, I need to be a heart surgeon. What models do I have around me? And then you see Dr. A.J. Austin and The Resident, and you're like, okay, now I need to be like that, angry. and then you have the what, right? So the way you've learned how to interact with that system, right? So you have the host, the environment, and the way the agent, the way you sort of interact with the system, the coping mechanisms, your ability to say no. And so we really structured the disease that way. And then the result of that is that when we say, well, when there's a disbalance or a maladaptation between all these three things, that's where it comes out. And it's either like, people get chest pain from anxiety, they get immune. I described physical consequences, right? People that have there's a guy that tells a story about how he was so anxious every time he was getting in hospital, he couldn't walk, right? And then there's other things like more like a behavioral things, right? People that change job frequently, people that get tired of burnout. Then there's anxiety, the formal sort of depression stuff. And then there's other things like personal stuff, right? Failure, divorce, weight gain. The manifestation of it comes from this balance between you, the environment, and the way you interact with it.
A couple of the things you said right off the bat stood out to me. So I got to admit, my first thought was when you were talking about your friend in ID and you being a surgeon, I really wanted to ask, well, then what was your plan? Were you just going to be like, okay, so I'm just going to find the problem and then just stop? Like how were you trying to develop before he said, look at it as a disease? Was there anything you were going down? Because I mean, I say it in jest, but I mean, that's what surgeons are known for. You just find the problem and then remove the problem.
Right. We're sort of do it and think later. Well, yeah, it was, make a decision, ask for forgiveness, or do it and think later. I mean, it sort of came all together. I had started to write already. And I was, you start with this, there's always techniques to write nonfiction book, right? So you do like a map, what you want to talk about. You just write. There's always a structure around it. But then it sort of didn't flow right. And I have like over 20 testimonies from nurses, patients, specialists, and things. And although I think the core of what I wanted to say, it just didn't come together. And so I actually sent it to one of my mentors, and he actually forwarded it to I'm just being very honest, to a PhD who was a psychologist who was basically the doctor of doctors. So when you get to that point, he specializes into helping doctors get out of burnout and financial issues and HR visits. And he actually was very helpful. His name is Dr. Adler. He works at McGill in Montreal. And he has a full chapter where he summarizes all the different types of manifestation. And that's where I think talking with the infectious disease guy, it all came together.
And one other thing is, and I found it really interesting the way you talked about like perfectionism and, how healthcare workers are like that and how the system kind of drives it, or at least that's the way I took it. My question is, though, healthcare, especially certain professions, surgery, for instance, kind of seems to attract a certain person. So how much of this is the culture that we've built versus that's that person? I understand there's a shifting balance, but where do you think that fits?
If I understand correctly, what you asked is that you're sort of responsible for where you're at. And I think that's true. I mean, just if I look at myself, it was just no way that, I was just bigger than life at every step, right? So I didn't just want to do surgery. I wanted to do heart surgery. I just didn't want to go in medicine. I wanted to be president. I wanted to, be having the nicest girlfriend, the best results, the party the hardest, so it does attract a certain type of people. Now, that being said, we have a whole chapter talking about personality and how we acquire traits and things. I think it's very particular in medicine how we acquire these traits in the critical portion of our life, right? So it's same thing for nursing or other specialties. They say you acquire those personality traits, adulthood ones, integrity, sort of respect, and these things between 18 and 30 years old. And that's when there's all kinds of theories about it, but you can change it afterwards in an environmental sort of theory if there is big things, travels, military, there's military sort of services, but most of it is fixed. And so between this period where you're forced, like I'm sure you recall nursing and things, but you're pretty young and you're like facing really big stuff. I mean, you're seeing people die. So those character traits, or force onto you. I mean, who sees disasters and mortality that frequently when you're that young? So in some ways, I think we're responsible, but you're getting forced to sort of acquire rapidly those coping mechanisms, those character traits that are going to be forced on you because that's what the business is and the responsibility that goes with it. But you're not quite mature enough to be able to discern and things. And so we go in details. And when I started working, I was 31, right? So most of my adulthood was spending time in the hospital. And so in some ways, I think, yes, medical school and training or nursing school or whatever healthcare training you're going through could be better about, leveraging and gratifying some other qualities than results and rewarding like excellence to try to gear you towards the best route. I mean, maybe I would have been a better psychiatrist. I don't know, but it seems like it just nurtured this part of me that always wanted more and more. And so that became my way of dealing with everything in life.
Huh. If we look at it like a disease, what are the main symptoms that we should look for either in ourselves or we should look for in our colleagues that maybe they're having some maladaptive type symptoms?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. The system is pretty good about identifying when you sort of show up to work, you're drunk, or, you have a car accident because you're too tired, or, you go in this manic, depressing, episode, or you're psychotic, or you can't get up, The system is it's easy to say something's wrong, right? But what we're interested in the book is those subtle changes. And I think a couple of them, just to name a few, were, the things that come out of a lot of the testimonies is you start caring less, right? So this just becomes a job. You get less attached to people. The complication becomes just, another one. You sort of adapt this just passing by strategy to cope with things. It's another one and then COVID really kicked this up to another level, right? There's so much of it that, you sort of had to. So and then for me, it became that I didn't have the joy of coming to work and helping out people. I just lost it. It was more like a job. And I at some point, I didn't even want to do it anymore. So that's one. The losing empathy is a subtle one, but pretty common among people. The other thing is being angry. You think being angry is just I'm sure you guys have seen angry doctors, angry people, angry whatever, but angry is not normal. Angry is, and I was a regular at HR, like really regular, and I went to charm school and all that stuff. And I did it in the service, right? I thought I'm angry because I'm asking a lot of my folks around me, and this is how it needs to be successful. But being angry, it's like an emotion, right? It's like it's a physical manifestation of something you just can't hold, right? And so it's not normal. If you come to work, you're angry every day. That's not normal. So I think it's a subtle change of burnout, of anxiety, of sort of overwhelmingly taking too much on. So, being aware of those things. So lack of empathy, angry. And then there's the obvious one. I think having difficulties managing schedule, missing stuff, being late all the time, not eating well, gaining weight, feeling tired and chronically tired. So we go over that, feeling lonely at work. So this is the kind of stuff that's probably a bit more subtle, but certainly not normal.
I don't know if you saw, I giggled for a second, and it was not at what you were talking about. It was, I am pretty sure you were in my office literally today watching me go through my day. I was like, oh my goodness, this guy, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to lay down on the floor sometime and just let you talk to me and just be like, okay, clearly I've got some issues and Dr. Malta has got the answers. So like, let's figure this out, because like I said, and I don't think I'm alone. All right. And that's why I think it's so great having you on the show and talking about this, because I think this is prevalent through our healthcare, and B, like you said, COVID put it on steroids. So I don't think I'm alone. And while I did find it funny, because I was like, oh boy, this guy has certainly said some Tom traits more than once. Yeah. I think it's vitally important that people, while it is funny to think about ourselves that way, to realize that it is a problem. Because when you said it, I guess I'd never really considered it like that. Angry is not normal, because I've been there so long. I guess I just assumed that's where I was.
Right.
And so hearing you say it, I was like, oh boy, this is a problem.
And it's not normal. And it's actually going to be, I think we turn it around in the book, and we in the book, one of the things in recovery we talk about is, how do you check yourself? We call it virus scanning yourself every day. And part of that is to identify when you're angry, when you sort of have this sense of like bursting out, like, why are you at that point? Oftentimes there's a pretty clear reason. You're either tired, you take on too much, and it's de-escalating. I mean, I was escalating every little thing, whether it's work, it was my wife, it was every decision that was like not exactly how I wanted it to be, became like this platform for me to just burst out, or to shove my opinion into people's throat. And I'm including my ex-wife now, I don't think that's a normal behavior in any context.
Ben, stop looking at me. So It's like Dr. Malta is the Illuminati. He's in my head right now. Like, it's kind of freaking me out.
I was just planning on buying you the book. That's all. I'm just
Yeah, I'm gonna need 2 copies, one for at work and one for my house, just in case.
Because the thing is, I also allowed myself a lot of this stuff, right? You say I work so much, now I'm going to go and pass out drunk, because I'm allowed to do this because I just served for 10 days straight, and I'm going to go to eat these couple hamburgers because, I've worked so much, and then just and became, I mean, for me, it became pathological relationship with a lot of stuff that were justified by, for the greater good or whatever, for what I was doing,
Huh. So again, going back to it being a disease process, we've discussed the diagnosis, we discussed the symptoms. Next is treatment. So how do we treat this?
Well, what I was going to say is I like Ben's question, but I know he's got a book that explains this. So
No,
is
I know,
there like
and I don't want to get
a general? Yeah.
No, the hard part about healthcare, and I'll say this about the disease, it's contradictory, right? So who would work in a chocolate factory being diabetic? It becomes real tricky because who would be an alcoholic and work at the alcohol store, like like a beer liquor store? So, it's like you realize you have a problem with the healthcare, let's say, and then you sort of still have to do it, and it pays, and you have to go to work. And so realizing that is probably the first step, and not ignoring it. And we go over that, right, in the book. Not ignoring that you have a disease. It's the first step of any recovery, right? I have it or whatever, assuming that you have a higher self-control, whatever, that's first step. But it's just realizing that you have a problem and that you need to do something. So the first step in the recovery for me in the book was to take a pause, make yourself time. And I'm reading this book now, which is kind of a funny book, but it's called A Unicorn Space. So make your unicorn space, right? So create time to think about yourself, create time and that requires actively making the time, dropping stuff. For me, it was like, going over meetings and stuff I was doing that was not important, taking a pause in terms of cases. I actually went to Thailand for a while to think. Not everybody needs to do that or can do that, but I think taking a pause and reassessing everything and making time to think about this. Then I think it's realizing and that you are not God. A lot of the work we do, and that's a figure of speech, is that there's things you can control. The system is such a way, the patients are such a way. You're just another bozo on the bus, right? So you have a role to play. And that's another quote for somebody else, but
I like it.
You're not the one driving
I said, I like it. I'm going to use that.
Right. You're not a bozo on the bus. You're not driving the bus. You're not the funniest bozo. You're just one other bozo. So but you have a role to play, meaning when you do your job right and you have outcomes that are not quite the ones you want, then it's okay, and you have to start learning how to deal with that. And it's okay to assume that there's some things that you can't change. You just come in as a tool to help someone in the bigger scheme of their life. They come in with many years of issues or behaviors or habits that led to the moment. You do what you can, and if it doesn't go well, it's okay, as long as you played your part, and did it right. So that's harder said than done. And then we go over like this step recovery process that includes checking yourself, like I was talking about, virus scanning yourself on a daily basis, talking it out, speaking up, starting movement, talking to your friends, gathering and gathering people around you that are like-minded as well. I mean, oftentimes, how many times you've been in a dinner? At least I know for doctors, it's pretty common. I just had one recently that wore me out, but when you go to these dinners, it's sort of like these. We used to call it the cone of silence dinners, right? So you go to this restaurant, you eat in the sort of the round table, and it's a moment to just talk about everybody. This one did that, and this one did this. I mean, talk about how negative that is for someone. So surround yourself with people that are like-minded. That means sometimes to be resilient, to sort of go over things that people have done to you, forget, which is not always easy in what we do. And so, yeah, we go over that, some of these like tips and things to do that has helped me, and that have been like the common denominators among people that I've interviewed over the last couple of years.
You're talking about knowing your role basically as a bozo on the bus, and you're not driving the bus. That reminds me, I had a friend who's a colleague, and I had lost a young patient, and I was really beating myself up really bad over it, just feeling like I could have done more. And he told me something that has stuck with me. It's been probably 5 years now. He said, there's 3 types of patients. There's a patient that's going to live no matter what you do. There's a patient that's going to die no matter what you do. And then there's a patient that you can really help. And he says, and that's what you need to focus on. And I was like, but that analogy of the bus is very similar to, like, there are going to be people that no matter what we do, we're still going to lose them. So we just really got to focus on the ones that we can help.
Right. And actually gave I have a pretty good long talk on managing mortality in these high intensity jobs. And we go over exactly what you're talking about. There are people that are going to die that have a high risk of mortality. There are people that are going to live, and they're low risk people. And then there's like the middle part. And that's the one you need to manage. That's the gray area. That's the one that, you need to be attentive to details, because they're the ones that you can influence the most, And that, fortunately enough, that's above 70% of the ones we meet, But that's a great, being the bozo on the bus. It's an old book. I can't recall who the author is. I'll send it to you guys. Please. But I just read that quote. I thought it was a great analogy. I mean, because you hear that a lot in meetings, right? Many times have you heard this? You get on the bus or you get off the bus,
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I just heard it on one meeting recently, and I just said, you know what? I'd just rather be another guy on the bus and just stay in the bus. The bus is just the bus, you're not driving it, and you're not managing the door. You just sit in it, so.
Well, Doc, I think we're getting close to wrapping this up, and it has been a great talk. So before we go, obviously we want to get, the word out. So where are places that they can find information on you, the book, buy it, all that stuff?
Yeah. So, we've created a website, healthcareanonymous.com, where you can, of course, buy the book. Once it gets released, it'll be available, and also in all the usual suspects. You can pre-order the book on Amazon, BAM, all the usual places. We also have offerings in that book. I've created a workshop program where actually I'll come to your place, do a 360 analysis, and give a talk, have people kind of learn on the topic, and just we call it the SWOT visit, the Healthcare Anonymous SWOT visit. So we come in, we assess things, and we help you. You got to try to get a little bit better. The whole point about the book is raising awareness on this, and I think we're going to need that moving forward. A lot of the themes that we have, you talk about other people listening to your show. Healthcare, in some ways, in high-intensity environment. Other high-intensity groups have started to come out. You see athletes now, Olympic athletes, hockey players, being sort of mindful about those things. So actually, I've associated myself with a couple partners and a former soccer player in the World Cup who's retired now, and we created a company that's called breakthroughpoints.com. We can go there, Breakthrough Points, and we basically offer services to try to help people function better. So we call it the flow state, right? Attaining this flow state within these environments where you have to perform, or you have to. So we offer coaching, we offer visits, even education and things like that. So breakthroughpoints.com, healthcareanonymous.com are the 2 major places, and of course all the major distributors as well.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we drop those down in the show notes so that they can just click on them there. I do want to plug the full title of the book. And like I said, we'll have links to purchase it on Amazon. Healthcare Anonymous, learn how to put yourself first while pursuing a calling. Doc, we appreciate you coming on. We can't let you go, though, without doing our normal segments we do with all of our guests, and that's 5 questions. Join us on a journey into the inner psyche of our guest as we ask 5 questions. So we're going to play 5 questions. I ask the questions. Tom makes fun of your answers. So
okay. Yeah, shoot.
Question 1. What's your favorite medical word?
Code Blue.
Okay. Tom, what do you got for that?
So, Ben, our last guest, we did 5 questions, stumped me with a couple. And honestly, I'm going to not make fun of this answer because I wish I'd thought of it. Well, so I was in trauma ICU and an ER nurse before I went into family practice. And I got to be honest, and I don't mean this bad for anybody that's not in healthcare. I don't want this to sound bad, and I don't mean excitement like a roller coaster excitement. I don't mean like pleasurable excitement, but I didn't have to think. When you said Code Blue, my entire world shifted. I was only focused on that person, that patient, anything within a 5-foot radius of me. If you didn't exist there, I did not give a shit. I was just focused on what I was doing. And that is a feeling that is hard to tell other people about. Like I could tell you all day about being in a Code Blue, but until you've been in the Code Blue, it's just,
Yeah.
It's some other things. I've been in police chases. I could tell you what it's like to be in a police chase, but until you are red and blues chasing a guy that's trying to get away from you, you can't really describe that feeling. So yeah, that's a perfect answer.
No, we were talking about it today because all that stuff we're talking about, like the resentment, the culture, the stuff that's going on, the mental health, like when you hear that word, like you automatically become dedicated to helping out others, irrespectively of whether you don't like them, irrespectively if you just had we've been angry with somebody. Everybody stops. And so it's a very powerful world, I think.
It is. And it's like flipping a switch, literally. And for those that don't know or have only seen Code Blues from television shows, what he said is 100%. You could be in the middle of something and all of a sudden you hear the overhead, incoming, whatever your hospital protocol is, but it's something like that. Incoming, priority 1, Code Blue, 5 minutes.
Yeah. And a matter of fact, the book is translated in French, because it was bought by a French editor, and the French editor changed the title for Code Blue.
Oh, that's fantastic. So look at that, Ben. We even got an inside. What's going on?
Yeah,
inside scoop. Code Blue.
Question 2, Doc. If you could do any job in the world other than what you currently do, what would it be?
I always wanted to be in philosophy. Like wearing flip-flops in a basement with candles, writing like Socrates and stuff. It just didn't I was really good at it in college. And then I just got convinced that I wouldn't really make much money out of it. So
that was what I was going to say was, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Doc, that's where I was going to go with making fun of this is, boy, flip-flops are great because that's all you can get. So that's when people say, oh, I love being at the beach. I'm like, yes, because you're homeless. So yeah, that's a great system you built there. It's self-fulfilling. Yeah, of course you're happy because you have no other choice. So there,
it's full circle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I took the Pascal's wager and bet on money, so that's what I did. So there it is.
It's all about money. I love the ideas. I mean, at the time there was some, yeah. So I mean, there's like big ideas, inventing stuff. But yeah.
Question 3, Doc. Think back to your first car. Was it a stylish ride or a rolling turd?
It was a rolling turd. It was like a Hyundai XL red one. It was like it was like way too old. Nothing was working. I had to put as much oil in it than gas. And then I had my finger had to be on the broken, like those knobs, for it to for the music to play.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, so not the 100,000-mile warranty or bumper to bumper warranty Honda. You had the, you had that one. You had to.
Yeah, my dad said, I'm going to get into the car just to see it, because at some point it was smelling and things. He said he was going to take a ride with me. We drove it right to the shop, and then we sold it for $50.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. I want to make fun of that answer, but honestly, you did the job for me, Doc. I don't even have to do anything on that one. That's a good, I like that. But see, that's a real rolling turd, because every once in a while somebody's like, oh, it was terrible. It was like, Buick LeSabre, and it was really, I was like, that's not a rolling, a Hyundai that you had to put your finger on the button to hear music.
I carried these boxes of oil, so I could I would put gas in and I would open the thing and put oil in it. This is much.
Yes. And all the environmentalists in the world just sighed, just listening to that. So.
Not buying the book. Got, don't like that guy.
Question 4. If your house is on fire, everyone, including your pets, are safe. Other than pictures, what's the one thing you want to get out of your house?
The one thing, my dog.
No,
I guess
the pets are safe. Pets are safe. Yeah, we're not that cruel, Doc. Come on, man.
I mean, the material stuff is, I'm not really attached to much of that stuff, but that's a good question.
Well, that's the only kind we got, Doc. Are the good ones.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry. I guess it tells you a bit about me. As long as my people are safe, I don't give a shit about clothing or whatever, TVs or guitar. I would take my guitar out. How about that?
Your guitar. Okay, what kind of guitar is it?
I have an electric guitar. It's like a Gibson newer model. It's kind of a more, but yeah.
Okay.
Electric guitar Gibson.
But your house is on fire, so what are you going to play it with?
I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna play exactly that song. Your house on fire. Burn, burn.
The Talking Heads, burn, motherfucker, burn. Yeah. Honestly, I would. If I saw a guy playing a guitar singing "The Roof Is on Fire" outside of his own house fire, I would fall on the ground and piss my pants. I'd laugh so hard. Like I don't know what other thing.
I mean, it's an automatic hit on medias, right? The guy just sitting and then playing like bird.
Yeah,
kind of funny.
Yeah. Also, the cops will soon be investigating you as well for possible arson. So, yeah, have some alibis lined up. But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Question 5. You have $9.18 in your pocket. You're at a convenience store or gas station. What all do you buy?
I knew exactly what the old Simon would have bought, but the newest Simon probably like a bunch of lottery tickets.
Hey, there you go.
Just trying to turn this thing around,
I like it.
No, yeah. Again, it's one of those answers. I mean, there's things like it, but it's just a good answer. Like, hey,
yeah.
But you wouldn't even get like a bottle of water, like nothing.
No, I mean you can always, you can always find that stuff, I guess.
Well, not all of us have a Hyundai of Wonder. Like I can't just reach in the back seat and pull shit out. So
you would have bought like probably a paint of oil.
Don't drink that.
But I wouldn't have drank, but put in his old car, motor oil.
Yeah.
All right.
To get further.
So that's the last question. I have a bonus question I want to ask. No, it's good, Ben. So you are from Canada, correct? I didn't read that wrong, did I?
Right. Nope.
So
French Canadian.
So I got a feeling I know the answer to this. Who's your team?
Montreal Canadian, for sure. You guys, yeah. I
have an internal hatred for the Montreal Canadiens. I am a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, and I can't remember what the game was, but you guys were just killing us, and I was like, that's it. I hate the Habs. I can't deal with this.
Wasn't it recently, like when they got further? I was fortunate enough, if you follow the older hockey, but Guy Lafleur, like the flower, like the sort of.
No, I'm still relatively new to hockey.
He's in the I have a good story to tell you guys, but he used to be pretty famous. He's the most, his bypass surgery and a couple of years ago. And then he was sitting, in the ICU bed the next day. And he's sort of this famous thing. And there was this newspaper article, how his heart stopped, for his fans for a couple hours while the surgeon was doing surgery. Sort of this, and then he's texting on his phone, right? You love the story. You know what it's getting at. He's texting on his phone, and then he says, hey, Simon, can you help me out? Like, I need to enter this new contact in my phone. I know it's American number. I don't know how to do that. So I take his phone, and I say, see, you say add contact here and things. I say, what's the name? And he says, Bobby Orr. so I'm like, what?
What'd you just say?
And he's like, he looks at me and he's like, "What? You don't know how to spell it?" And I'm, "No, I'm good. I know how to spell Bobby."
Yeah. That's like asking me. I was gonna say that's like asking, "Do you know how to spell Gretzky?" Yeah, I've heard that one before. Yeah.
Before or he was texting it, or like ORR, and I think we're good.
Yeah. That is fantastic. No, I'm a huge hockey fan now. And okay. I was hoping you were going to say the Maple Leafs, but then you said the Canadian. I was like, oh boy.
No, actually, I have a hatred for them. I mean, somehow it's the French part of me, right? I mean, you have this. There's the English part of Canada with the hockey has always been very competitive with Montreal. So it's pretty high intensity hockey over there.
Well, my best
friend is a former player for them, so I have a special interest for that. So
well, maybe I hate him a little less today, but I'm just saying, like, oh boy, me and the Habs.
You got to go to a game. If you go to a game in Montreal, it's one of those things that, one of the 100 things you should do before you die.
You know what? I've talked to Ben about this, and I have tried to tell him, because like I said, I love the Blue Jackets. They're a small market team. They're my team. And I've been like, you got to come up. You got to come up and see. Like, when you go to the game in person, it's a whole different experience, and you fall in love with it. So, but Doc, I won't keep you on any longer. Otherwise, we could talk about this all night.
You have the chance to go. It's the smallest arena in the league. The Jets, Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
There's like 15,000, seats in their arena, but it's packed every night, and it's the best experience ever.
Doc, I'm pretty sure we have high school arenas bigger than that up here. So.
Yeah. I know, right? But it's a great experience. But yeah, you should definitely go see a game, Ben.
And Ben, you got to come up, and I will try and time it so that it's when we're playing the Habs, and we'll get a hold of Doc here and just let him know how bad we beat him.
Special fly it over. Yeah.
Well, Doc, thanks again for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I really hope that lots of people check out this book, because I really think that, like you said, as
especially
we're coming out of COVID, we're going to have all kinds of issues in healthcare, and so I really hope that this book can help a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, guys. It's been great. It's certainly been a good journey, and just happy to share my experience. So thank you for the great show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Practice swearing just to pass the time. Lately I see why I am alone. I caught some road rage and I thought of you, and all the many times you say I should have known.